Hi, I'm Beth's mum and I'm going to go through a few top tips on how to communicate with Beth effectively. The first thing to say is find a communication profile. There's one being produced, something like this. Have a look through that and that's your top guide and your prompt, but I'm going to talk through a few of the things that are on there. And the other thing to say is it takes time to understand how to communicate with Beth, so don't worry if it takes you time. The most important thing is to be observant, watch how other people do it and be consistent. So first things first, when communicating with Beth, please try to stand where she can see you, and if you're holding anything for her, make sure that you're holding it in a good position for her eyes. Her eyes do get tired and they tend to wander, so just watch where they are. So if you're holding something up for her to see, a book, we don't know whether she's short-sighted, long-sighted or has perfect eyesight, so don't hold things right close to her face. Hold them as you would reading distance away, and enable them to, and you when you're communicating with her as well, stand in a position where she can see you and see your face and your expressions and hear well. The other thing to say is that she can hear and she can understand everything. So you don't need to speak slowly and you don't need to speak loudly. You just need to speak clearly and make sure that you give her time to respond. So because of her brain injury, it takes time for her to get the message out. So she might have heard it, she might have understood it. For her to be able to tell you whether she wants to say yes or no can take some time. So just make sure you wait. Pausing is really important. However, on the other side of things, if you wait too long, she is only 15 and she will get bored and turn off. So there's a fine balance. I'll talk about that in a bit more. The other thing is, if you're not sure what Beth is trying to say to you, she would much rather you say that you're not sure and to check with her and to say, if you're still not sure, I'm really sorry, I might have got this wrong. Rather than just make it up and pretend and hope that you're getting it right. Or say to her at least things like, I think what you're saying to me is this, is that right? And give her time to say yes. Or say, I'm still not 100% sure, but I'm going to go with this because I know it's what you often choose. So just explain to her why you're making the choices you're making rather than just plough ahead and hope for the best. So how does Beth say yes? Beth says yes by rolling her eyes up or lifting up her eyebrow. Her, let me get this the right way around. Her right side of her body is her strongest, so you'll often see her right eye or her right eyebrow is the one that moves. Sometimes she can nod as well and tell you. Her no is sometimes closing her eyes or screwing them up, but sometimes we just take the absence as a yes as a no. So our guess is probably 60 to 80% of the time we get this right. So it's not a foolproof method and it does take some subtleties and you have to be watching her facial expressions all of the time. Top tip though is she will sometimes just smile in response. Now, sometimes that smile does mean a yes, but not always. It just could be she's amused by something else that's going on in the room. So just be cautious of using a smile as a yes at all times. Another thing to point out is that if she wants to get your attention, it's very hard for Beth to be able to do that. So if she deliberately turns her head to look at you or starts tapping her foot very hard or waving her arms around particularly ferociously, then sometimes that's her way of trying to get your attention. So if that kind of thing happens or you feel like Beth's staring at you, great opportunity to say, is there something you want to talk about? Is there something you want to ask or tell me? And then to begin to have a conversation. The important thing to remember is because Beth's locked in, she can only answer really using her eyes to say yes or her nod to say yes or the absence of it to say no. So essentially communication with Beth is like playing a massive game of 20 questions. So everything has to be binary. It has to be yes or no, or it has to be going through options to be able to choose. So there's no point saying to her, what's your favourite colour? Unless you're going to say to her, your favourite colour, is it red or pink or blue or something else? So that's a demonstration of how we go through a multiple choice question. So we offer her the options, often use your fingers, or if you're holding up coloured pens to choose, for example, or books to read from, hold up the actual thing so she can visualise what you're saying and isn't just responding to your auditory cues. But use some kind of visual prompt as well. So tell her what your options are going to be. Often we say give 3 options, and then something else is like you get out of jail card. So I've only given Beth red, pink and blue as 3 options there. If her favourite colour's yellow, she's stuck. She's just going to either not respond or pick something just to shut me up. By saying something else, or sometimes if we're doing a question at school and the answer might, and you might want to say, I don't know, that's a kind of get out of jail free card. And that gives you the option to then go on to the next set of things. So let's imagine she said yes to something else. Then I'd have to think, right, other colours, let's pick some other ones. The important thing is that you always go through in the same way, that if all of us are consistent in the way we communicate, we're much more likely to help Beth to be able to communicate. So give those choices. So I'm going to, Beth, give you to choose between red, pink, blue or something else. Let's go back through now and let's go through. Are you ready to choose? You might pause if it's something quite tricky she's got to think about. Give her time to respond and think. And then she might say yes to you, or you might just wait a few minutes and think, okay, that's enough. Okay, let's have a go, Beth. So, is it red? Is it pink? Is it blue? Is it something else? That's the kind of speed, and a good way to give yourself a cue is actually to count to about 5 seconds in between. Some days Beth's tireder and you need to go a little bit slower. Sometimes she might respond straight away. What you've got to do is make sure you divide up those options so she's not saying yes to the previous one because she was a bit slow, and she's not saying yes to the one ahead because you're being a bit slow. So getting that pace right is quite useful, and that takes practice as well. If you've gone through and you're not seeming to get an answer, there might be something else. So if I hadn't got that something else for the colour question, and Beth's sitting there thinking, nope, none of these things, I want something totally different. So sometimes use that as a kind of a check in yourself. Oh, could there be something else that Beth's trying to tell me? Something else she wants to choose from, and then go back and offer some more choices. Okay, final couple of thoughts. Sometimes Beth just gets tired and needs to rest her eyes. She's not always asleep. Sometimes light can be a bit too much. So just be aware of the lighting in a room. Make sure there's not bright light shining in her eyes. And sometimes just the kind of noise and overwhelm of the day can be too much, and she needs to rest her eyes. So then it's a good opportunity to say to her, just take a couple of minutes, close your eyes, that's all right, and we'll come back to it in a minute, and then you can give her a bit of peace and quiet. She's always happy for you to ask questions. She's always happy to have conversations. The main thing is please don't make assumptions about what she's saying or not saying. If you get to that point and you think, I'm really stuck, I'm not sure what I'm seeing and I'm hearing, please just say to her, I'm not really sure what you're telling me, but I know that you often like to read a story at this point in the day. So shall we get your storybook and have a look at that? And then we'll stop again in 10 minutes time and you can tell me if you want to do something different. So there are some tips on how to communicate with her, but above all, watch others and practice. All right, have fun.